And we're back with our avatar-inator. We got our project up and running, but this avatar, the large one, just looks ugly. Most of the other ones probably could be displayed, but there was something about the different shapes on this that I would like to fix. So the problem is the SVG widget just can't handle the more complex scalable vector graphics. What we really need is some kind of tool that will display it in all of its glory. And if we just had a browser, yeah, that's what we would need. Well, guess what we have available at our disposal? Another module called PyQt6 Web Engine basically allows you to insert like a browser right in your GUI, which is great if you want to, let's say, insert an image from a website, you know, that is a remote website. You want to pull it in and display it, or you have your own image and you want to display it, and you know some HTML, that's perfect. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to install it. So what you do is you look for the part that says pip install, and then you just want to copy this. I'm just going to copy that part. I'm going to go to my project, and I'm going to use Poetry to add it. And if I can click on the right one here. And let's go ahead and close the app so I can get back into normal terminal. And we're just going to do Poetry add, and then we're just going to Control V to paste PyQt6-Web Engine. Bam, we got that. First things first, we need to import what we're going to do. It's really interesting. You had to import it separately, but we're going to do a from PyQt6. Oh my goodness, look at that. It somehow knew we had added it. Well, that's brilliant. All right, save it. We got it. Let's scroll down, and there's our avatar. We're going to rename this to the avatar main display. Main display, and it's no longer going to be our SVG widget. So just get rid of that dude there. And it's a QWebEngineView. It knew what we wanted to do. That was pretty handy there. So we have our WebEngineView. We can set the size. So let's go ahead and set the size. Now, here's the main key to the WebEngineView. You can set the HTML. You can put code right in there. And it will display the code. We're going to do that eventually, but not just yet. All right. So now we're going to set the fixed size. There it is. All right, we're going to do 240, I believe, and I had experimented with this ahead of time, so I knew that that would be a good size to do. Let's set some margins as well, too. Self.avatar main display dot set content margins, down arrow, and we're going to just set them all at 5. There we go. Nice. Save our changes. Excellent. Okay, so we got that. Let's get that window closed. So we have our content margins, and now what we want to do is we're going to set the avatar. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it as a method that's part of the app. Okay, so the app is going to set the method. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and then we'll figure out how to code it in just a moment. Set, and we're going to call it the default avatar. How did it know I was going to? That's a little fishy. Very fishy indeed. Well, pretty cool. I think Copilot is taking over. I thought I disabled it. Maybe it's hit singularity and it decided that I don't really want to turn it off. Scary. All right, moving along though. We need to create that method. Just going to copy that. We're going to scroll down. Or maybe it's just that VS Code is just getting way better. Set fonts. Should we alphabetize it? Set default? Sure, why not? Let's alphabetize. Oh yeah, sure. Tab. There we go. Okay, so the key to setting an avatar is we need to get the code from the, if we go to the images over here, and for example, I think the default one is the bots. So this is the one we're going to use for the default. Notice this is HTML. It's big, well, it's not. It is and it isn't. It's an SVG file. It's a single file, but you can load this in a browser and it just loads just right. You can see it. So if I were to open this file, I just go to File Explorer. If I were to open it in a browser, it would display the image because browsers know how to display it. So all we need is this code. Okay, but it's in a file, so we're going to need to open the file, read it, and it'll be just like when we set the fonts, right? And when we set the style sheet, excuse me. So I'm literally going to grab this code right here. And actually I can just grab all of this and then we'll move it over, because this does all of it. So we're in the default avatar. We already, if it's the default, it's always going to be the main one. So remember how we did that self avatar main display? All right, remember how we have that? So now this is nice because we can do this and we can set the HTML. So that is what we are going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and set the HTML, and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get the SVG file. Hold on a second. Okay, so to get this, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in all of my code and tab it over. All right, so instead of resources styles now, we're going to go to images and we're going to get the, all right, we're going to get the relative link of our, oh look, we already have it. It's called main avatar SVG. So I'm going to copy the relative path and I'm going to paste it in here, paste. And it's not a style sheet, it's going to be the avatar. Whoa, caps lock. Avatar SVG equals, and I'm going to start with none, and it's not style sheet equals f.read, it's avatar SVG f.read. We're going to set the HTML as such. We're going to save our changes and we're going to run it and see how we did it. Did it work? Okay, we have an error. I know what the error is. I saw it earlier right here. It's avatar main display. There it is. Save our changes. Run it. Look at that. We got it. Okay. So we had to create the web engine view, and just a quick recap of the code that we did so you can pause and see what I did here. We created, first of all, we had to install it, right? We had to do the import statement from PyQt6 Qt Web Engine widgets, import QWebEngineView. And once we had that, here's the code for setting the main avatar. We create our web engine view, we set a fixed size, and you can adjust that depending on your needs. And we added some margins around it, and then we called this new method called setDefaultAvatar, which we just coded down below. So that will call this down here, and it's using that with open type format. So we create an SVG. I like to initialize something, and usually I just initialize it to none. In this case, it's actually a string, so I could just put it as an empty string like this. And then we get the path to the styles. Make sure you're using forward slashes when you copy a relative path. If you didn't set it, it might be backslash. That could cause problems, so change any backslashes to forward slashes. And then with open, and we grab that path, and we set it as read only. We name it F, and then we read it into the string variable called avatar SVG. It gets the code, and then we set that as HTML on our main display. And then you run it, and if it looks good, you did it right. There it is. Notice it did take a little moment to load, a little bit slower, but at least it looks nice. I'm going to type clear. You're like, why does all that code pop up? Well, let me show you what's going on. So I run the app, right? And then I get all this code. Where's the code coming from? Well, let me show you. We have all this code. They're all in the global scope. How do we know it's in the global scope? Well, there's no functions. There's no classes, right? It's all in here. So when we import a file, it's going to actually run that file. So let's run it again, and I'll do the clear one more time just to prove my point. It's clear here. We go to run it. Ouch. All that stuff's there. Okay. So it's actually going in, and it's doing all this code here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some extra code. The first thing I want to do is really what's happening. It's the print statements that are doing it. Okay. But we're going to do like an overhaul of all of this. But the first thing I'm going to do is this if name is equal to main. In fact, we're going to do that response. Actually, we're going to just basically do all this stuff. If you've ever seen this, if name is equal to main. All right, then I'm going to take all this code and tab it over. All right, clear the screen, not celer it. We're going to clear it. All right, screen is clear. We now have the if name is equal to main. I'm going to save my changes. All right, when I go to the app, and I'm still importing controller, I haven't changed app at all. I'm going to run it. It pops open. Notice nothing is printed to the screen. All right, we're going to close it. All right, it's closed, right? Now we're going to go to controller, and now we're going to run it. There you go. So what was happening is when you imported it, it ran any code that was in the global scope. Right now it is still actually doing this. And if we want to put a breakpoint in, because I think this is kind of fun, I'm just going to put a breakpoint right here on the import system. I'm going to run this in debug, run in debug, and I got to select the Python debugger, do the Python file. All right, look at this. When after line 1, we're on line 2, we haven't done anything other than line 1. Look at the controller. There's the base URL, there's the file type, there's the request with all the stuff from making that request. Look at that. And then the seed and the style. All because all that was run. None of this was run, okay? Notice you won't find a URL over here. There's base URL, that's that variable, but there's no just URL. It's not in there. Oh, the RE is, sorry, that's the library that we imported. So that's, now you got a little glimpse as to what's going on. I'm just going to go ahead and stop the debugger. I don't really need that. I'm going to go back to the app and remove that. We don't need it. All right, let's talk about, the first thing we're going to do is, now that I got all that set up, let's start by looking for an opportunity to use the controller. And one of the things I was thinking is whenever we do this, like in the set default avatar, where we have a path, and then we open the path, and then we read it, and then we use it to set the HTML, we're doing a little functionality, right? And then if we go down to where did we do it in here? No, we didn't do it here, but look down here, there it is again, styles path with open. Okay, here's our opportunity. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically write a function in controller to get the contents of a file, and then we'll replace it. So I'm going to do a type of a test-driven development. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and define our first function, and we're going to call it get file contents. Okay? To get the file contents, we need a path. And that's going to be in the form of a string. And then the contents of a file are always in the form of a string, so we're going to actually return a string. All right, this is called a type annotation or type hinting. Right? So in other words, it tells us, all right, path is in the form of a string, it's going to return a string. All right, so how do we do this? Okay, so we're going to just grab the code. We already have working code, right? So I'm going to start with code. Now, notice we did the style sheet equals none, styles path equals. Okay, so we're going to keep, this is going to be an input. So really all we need is this code here and then to return the value. All right, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to the controller. I'm going to paste it with open. All right, now it's not styles path anymore. It's just path. And then we're going to return path. Or, sorry, no. We're going to return code. Code equals, and then we're going to return the code. Contents. It's file contents. If you're going to give it a name like get file contents, then we need that. So we're going to say contents equals f.read, and then we're going to return contents. All right. Yeah. So now that we have this functionality, I'm going to add a doc string. Okay, so here is the doc string that I added. You always want to have a description of what it does, a list of any of the parameter arguments. You call them args, and that's just the path to the file. It returns contents, file contents. So there we got our code. Now it's time to test it out. So there's a lot of different ways to test it out. One of which, of course, you can just go down here to the if name is equal to main. And watch what I do. I wrote file equals, and then I did a link to the styles. And then I'm going to create a variable called code, and I'm going to get the file contents, and I'm going to print out the code once I get it. So let's go ahead and run it. And there it is. You can see all of the code that I wrote. Great. So that's one of the ways you can test it. Another way you can do it is by using PyTest and using test folder. When you do poetry, they'll give you a test folder, and I actually created a file here. If you are interested in learning about like PyTest and doing tests, I'll do a series on it, and I'll see what my students want to do. But for now, we've got this. I think it works. So let's go try to implement it in our app. So we're looking for any time we did this. So remember how we had the style sheet equals. Okay, so this is the path that we want. So we're going to try to do this. Let's go ahead and run it and just make sure it works. And all right, so we see how the styles are working. All right, so we want the styles to continue working. So now I'm going to do, let's do styles path. And then instead, I'll do style sheet equals. And it's controller dot, and it's get file contents. And look, there's my, that's the doc string I just wrote. And now I'm going to send it styles path. And I'm going to get rid of the style sheet here. And this should work. I'm going to save my changes and we're going to run it. We still have the styles. It's working. So where else are we getting file contents? There it is. Set default avatar. Once again, styles path. And then we're going to do avatar SVG. So I'm going to actually cut that there. Get rid of that. And I'm going to paste. And we're going to just say that it's controller dot get file content, styles path, and save our changes, run it again. Is it still working? Still working. All right, great. We have all of our functionality for getting the file content. So any other time we need it, we're just going to run that code. Okay, so we've got our widget. We're starting to do some coding with our controller, but we've kind of run out of time. So we're going to just wrap it up on this, and on the next tutorial we're going to start, we're going to go back to the controller, work on the API call, and then we're going to start adding some functionality to our widgets. So stay tuned for that. And